Good morning. Welcome to CCA's 2022 Mobile Carrier Show. I'm Steve Berry, President and CEO of CCA, and thank you for being here. I want to also welcome those who are joining us by webcast, so thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Tampa. You know, it's been a busy weekend already, and we made sure you had a Justin Bieber concert to go to on Saturday night. And then Sunday night we had a hockey game with the Lightning, and then comes Monday and we had our Health and Wellness Day sponsored by Nokia on Monday. All of those winners, by the way, for the contest, we'll announce those tonight at the exhibit hall. So we have nice prizes for those who won, those that are super fit. I think you'll be impressed. I was. And then we finished off the evening last night with Cineverse's welcome reception. So thank you, Cineverse. I think it was a great event. Hope everybody enjoyed it. So now we're ready to get all dressed up on telecom all day long. So hope you got something to eat. I hope you got some coffee this morning. I want to thank T-Mobile for being our sponsor of the breakfast. So thank you, T-Mobile. So here we go. Let's just jump right in. We got a lot planned for today. So I'm very pleased to introduce our first keynote session, the FierceWireless Executive Panel, sponsored by T-Mobile. Fierce has been a longtime supporter of CCA, a media partner. We're very glad to welcome them back to the Mobile Carrier Show. Fierce Wireless shares our passion for wireless issues, especially those issues impacting rural and regional carriers. And I think we have a great discussion planned here around 5G deployment. And here to lead the conversation is Bevan Fletcher, editor of Fierce Wireless. And Bevan, I'm going to let you take it here. From here, introduce your expert panel. And ladies and gentlemen, come on in and we'll welcome Bevan and the expert panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Welcome. I'm so excited to be here for this keynote session. And as Steve said, we have a lot to get into and a great lineup of speakers. So with that, I'm just going to pass it off for some quick introductions. Grant, do you want to get going?
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. There it goes. Grant Spellmeyer with U.S. Cellular. I run our Washington, D.C. policy office. We're the nation's fourth largest wireless carrier, serving 21 states.
And Steve Sharkey with T-Mobile. So I represent the company in Washington, D.C. also on any technology issues. Spend a lot of time on Spectrum particularly. T-Mobile is number 2 nationwide carrier.
Bridget Reardon from Cellcom. I'm the CEO at Cellcom, and we're based in Wisconsin, and we are the 7th largest wireless provider.
I'm Alan Gillen with Appalachian Wireless. We're a regional carrier in the mountains of eastern Kentucky. We serve 27 counties there. We cover the territory east of I-75 and south of I-64. We've been at this about 30 years, and we've got a great network there, and we believe that the mountains of eastern Kentucky are the most challenging anywhere in the United States for terrain, for coverage. So we've got a great challenge, and we enjoy it.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And let's jump right into some questions. I think to set the stage, it would be great. We have obviously a diverse range of carriers here. If you could kind of give us an idea of where you are on your 5G roadmap, how much of a network priority it is at this point. And Grant, do you want to kick it off?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So U.S. Cellular is now well into, I think, our 3rd year of 5G deployment around the country. We've stood up 5G on a number of towers across each of our operating markets in our 21 states, and are continuing to roll that out to additional sites in each of those markets. We have deployed, we have a very robust spectrum portfolio, including low, mid, and high band spectrum, and are in the process of deploying all of that to the degree it's cleared and available at the moment.
Great, thanks. And then maybe we can just go down the line, and Steve?
Yeah, so we launched 5G in December of 2019, and with our 600 megahertz spectrum as a broad coverage layer. We also have, like Grant talked about, that layer cake approach with mid-band and then high-band spectrum. So launched initially in December 2019. We began adding mid-band spectrum in April of 2020 when we completed the merger with Sprint, and have been rolling that out very aggressively. So we have, right now, we're 310 million pops covered with our extended range, the 600 megahertz spectrum, and 210 million pops with our ultra capacity mid-band spectrum, and we'll cover, by the end of this year, we'll be at 260 million pops with mid-band, and end of 2023, 300 million pops. So it's a pretty aggressive rollout.
Mm-hmm. Great.
We've been obviously preparing for our 5G rollout for a long time. We're in a good position to roll out early this year, and we have about 20% of our market covered with 5G. And for us, we look at, primarily we're thinking about rural areas. And so when we launch 5G, we launch it in places like my hometown of Pulaski, which is 3,000 people. So it's been really exciting for those kind of people to be like, hey, okay, it's here for us too. So yeah.
Like everybody else, we have participated in the spectrum auctions, and we have the millimeter wave, the mid-band, and the low band. Our initial rollout that we plan will be on the low band, and we have a good amount of spectrum there. We plan to build it out over a period of hopefully within 3 years, starting in 2022. We don't have any up today, but we do have a plan that we plan on totally mirroring our present low band 4G LTE coverage areas, and we do plan to try to build it out to serve the total area that we have as a network today, and we plan to cover that with 5G.
Okay, great, thank you. And so at different points in deployment, obviously all at top of mind, what are kind of the biggest drivers that driving the need for 5G? Is it marketing competition? Is it network performance? I mean, what's the main reason you're pushing to deploy 5G? Bridget, do you want to?
Yes, I would say yes. I think our competitors have done a fantastic job of advertising 5G. Thanks, you guys. And so everybody feels that they need to have it, and even though they don't necessarily know exactly what that means to them. But so I think advertising. But the other thing is just being able to use our spectrum efficiently. I think I talk about it as it's kind of a puzzle for a rural carrier like us to be extremely creative in how we utilize spectrum. So being able to refarm spectrum is really important to us as well, and build efficiencies into the network. It's interesting though, on the advertising note, we found out that I think it's about half of our customer base either thought we had 5G already or wasn't sure. And so again, thank you for helping us with that. So it's a combination.
Interesting.
Anything we can do to help.
Is that what you always say? I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Alan, are you seeing similar things on the marketing front, or do you have different factors driving your?
It's a combination of many factors. Probably the biggest factors, I feel like that if we don't do 5G in another 5 to 10 years, we won't have anything that our subscribers desire to have, and we'll be looking for some way to exit the industry. So we feel like, but we have a great desire to serve the people in the mountains of East Kentucky. Our ownership consists of 5 small rural telephone companies. 3 of those are member-owned co-ops, and so 60% of our operation is owned by the members served by those 3 co-ops. And then there's 2 family operations that go back to the late 1940s in their existence and on up through Telephone Wise. So that's the 5 telephone companies located in the mountains of East Kentucky, small rural. And we've been in a partnership arrangement since the lottery back in 1990. And they have a great desire to serve the people. There's been a lot of people in the United States and around the world feel like that the people in Appalachia, the people in the mountains of East Kentucky are incapable of doing anything worthwhile. But the way we've got it figured is anybody that can manage to make a living in the mountains of East Kentucky, to live in Chicago or New York City, be a piece of cake. So it's kind of the way we look at it. We'd like to see some of you folks in the city come and try to get by with the things we get by with. But we say that kind of in jest, but it's also very true. The people that have made their homes in the mountains of Appalachia, for the most part, are hardy people, and we enjoy it. The ownership, they go to the grocery stores, they go to church, they live there, the family owned. They've not taken their money that they've earned over 60 or 70 years and left the area. So it's real neat to have these 5 telephone companies and our wireless operation all together, real tightly knit, and with a great desire to serve the people. And we've been able to do our 4G in a way that we have a much greater network than anybody else has got in that territory. And we hope to be able to say that 5, 6, 7 years from now about our 5G.
Great, thank you.
So maybe just one more thought. From my perspective, we're still, there's a lot of marketing hype about 5G,
Yeah.
and yeah, you can't turn on an NFL football game without hearing a whole lot about 5G. And we've yet to see the arrival of that single killer application that really would drive customers to the stores in order to get it. But we continue to believe it's coming. In the meantime, there's a great deal of network operating efficiency that comes out of 5G that has driven us to move there as quickly as possible. And in addition, the evolution of fixed wireless deployments is moving very quickly, and that's going to be a significant 5G use case that we at US Cellular and many of the panelists, I think, are very interested in.
Yeah, and that's really, there is a lot of hype around it, and it may not be so apparent for an individual customer who can now read their email really fast because it's on 5G. But there is network efficiency, and it does open up a lot of other business models to serve. You've got network slicing that you can do, so you can serve more customized solutions for businesses to make them more efficient, and manufacturers that we can work with to do that. And there is a lot going on in innovation, and it takes a while. We always knew it was, you provide the capacity and the speeds and lower latency, and applications will come. And we've got innovation lab and effort, a lot of work going on with augmented reality, virtual reality applications. So you'll start to see more and more benefits come out of that. But those are the kinds of things that drive it, although the competitive atmosphere is a big driver as well, right? I mean, we all compete. A lot of those advertisements are around how fast and reliable the coverage is, and so that competition really has been successful in the U.S. and driving, fast rollout of new technology.
Mm-hmm. Great. And you touched on network slicing, which kind of ties back to the core network, and T-Mobile launched nationwide standalone. Can you give us any kind of update on how much traffic you're carrying, or how any kind of optionality for new services?
Yeah, so we launched the 5G standalone in August of 2020. We're the first globally, the first carrier to do that for a nationwide commercial network. And we've got I think it's about 50% of our traffic now is on 5G, and 40% of the smartphone devices are are on 5G. So it's, it is, are capable of 5G. So it's, it's gone very well. I know initial testing on that, when we rolled that out, showed a 40% decrease in latency. So you're seeing real benefits. It also allowed us to greatly extend our coverage because we weren't tied to LTE and our mid-band LTE layer. So we were able to really extend coverage and get full advantage of our low band 600 megahertz. So there was, I think it was about a 30% immediate increase in coverage for us as a result of that.
Nice. Okay, great. And then anybody else want to jump in on their core network upgrades and kind of how you're thinking about non-standalone, shifting to standalone? Okay.
So, speaking of competition, we're busily working on a standalone network. We've made a vendor selection. We're in testing with them, and I think it's our expectation that you will see us launch a standalone 5G option in our network as soon as that testing is done.
Okay, great.
We'll be coming up a standalone as we build ours out.
Yeah, going with standalone first?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And we're in the selection process. We're just going to try to beat U.S. Cellular together.
See, that's competition.
The engineers are here. Did you hear that, guys? That's what we're doing.
Competitive carriers.
That's right.
One thing that I will comment is, for over 30 years, when you're small and regional, you can't really make these decisions first. You have to wait and see what our national carriers are doing, what others are doing, and then you've got to make your decision. When you're small, you can't afford to make the wrong one. You can't afford to be wrong and leave yourself out there with something that doesn't really do what you need to do. So, but then once you make your decision, you've got to be fast to deploy.
Yep. We let them test it out. They can find all the stuff that's wrong with it, and then we do the stuff that's been really tested.
I think the only thing I'd add to that is I think that gap is closing over time. If you look at the evolution from 2G to 3G, most of the smaller carriers were significantly behind the national providers, and watch that go from 3G to 4G and now 4G to 5G and 5G to carrier aggregation deployments of 5G, and I see that timeline gap closing. But yeah, we always let the biggest guys take
it certainly
the leading
has,
edge.
and over time, certainly there are far fewer regional carriers than there once were. The number of regional carriers out there is much smaller now, and you're right. And those that are there have been at it quite a while. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I want to make a little pivot to kind of spectrum opportunities now. But before we get into that, even the topic of the FCC's auction authority, which is set to expire, I believe, September 30th. And how much of, we have spectrum auctions coming up, how much of a concern is this? What do you hope to see happen? Grant or Steve, do you want to?
Well, I don't think the Congress has ever let the FCC's auction authority expire, and we're getting awfully close to that September 30th deadline without having had a congressional hearing on it, or frankly much congressional discussion up until the last few weeks. So it's a watch point, an area of concern for us that it could expire, especially with the overhang of a scheduled upcoming auction to begin this summer. So we're worried about it. We want to see Congress extend the FCC's auction authorities so that they can conduct auctions, and to make sure that Congress sets up a pipeline of spectrum that would give the FCC additional opportunities to do further auctions.
Yeah, and it's, similar to Grant, right? We want to see it extended, and with the auction coming up, I don't think it's really a risk for this auction. The auction will start and move forward, and they'll have to. It's really the timing of the extension, and if it's, the best case would be for the Congress to do a short-term extension now, so everybody knows going into this auction, that the authority is there, and that there's no cloud over the auction at all. And I think, the auction will go forward, and it's whether or not how long the back end of the auction takes if it's impacted by auction authority. So, our hope is that Congress would act quickly to do a short-term extension, and then, the kinds of issues that Grant is talking about, where Congress has gotten very used to balancing the budget on the backs of the spectrum auctions, and doing a bigger pipeline bill that would include a pipeline of spectrum moving forward takes longer than it does to do a quick kind of shorter term extension. And I expect that'll be, because once you start putting spectrum bands in, in there, people get defensive, and it takes a while to work through the hill, right? There'll be bands, 7-8 gigahertz has been identified as a potential band for that. That's a DoD band. So they'll be back and forth with them. I know the chairwoman just identified 12 gigahertz as a potential auction band in a response to Congress recently. So that, and that one, there's a lot of controversy around it at the FCC. So it'll take a while to get that longer, bigger, longer term extension pipeline bill to move forward.
Okay, great. And on the 2.5 gigahertz auction coming in July, any plans to participate? I think we know probably one definitely will be showing up.
Is T-Mobile participating? I don't know.
Yeah. And has the auction format made any impact on your decision to sit out or bid? And I think, Bridget, you mentioned you.
I mean, we like this auction because, again, rural focused, by having geographies of counties is important for us. I mean, when we look at auctions and they're the large PEAs, they tend to scoop in some areas that everybody wants, and so the prices go up, and we really have to target where our spectrum is to fill out that puzzle. So that's exciting for us. I think there's, we always have to look at spectrum whenever there's an auction, and we'll definitely be participating in this one, hopefully. So.
Bridget's comments are very relevant to our scenario as well. Glad to see it available on a county-by-county situation in some previous auctions. In order to get spectrum, which you knew you had to have, we've had to invest quite a lot of money buying spectrum outside of the network area that we've got. Yeah. And what we'll do with that, will we develop it or will we possibly divest of it? We'll figure that out later. But certainly in the area that we've built a network and want to grow the network, if you don't have the spectrum, you don't have that opportunity. So we do have adequate spectrum to do it in our territory, but we had to invest quite a bit of money up front in areas that we might like to sell some spectrum to somebody that would need it in some of those PEAs outside of our area. So we'd be open to some of that at whatever time that the FCC appropriately allows us to do it. So, but the counties, and to participate in the 2.5, we will plan to participate in it on a county-by-county basis.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the FCC really ended up in a good place on the auction rules, right? With the format, with the ascending clock auction, I think works well for everybody, and
it does.
Provides the price discovery that we need, and kudos to CCA for really pushing back on some of the ideas of a single round sealed bid auction that, if you looked at who was supporting that, it was really people that were trying to disrupt the auction or were, WISPs that have a very different business model, or not the carriers that are going to deploy, mobile service in this band. Really impressive support from the carriers in the CCA members on the on this format, and I think it really came out to be a good good format that'll work well for this community.
Steve stole all my talking points. Kudos to Steve Berry and Tim Donovan and the team for their work on that. It was a really good outcome. 2.5 is really very appealing spectrum. We were very happy with the way the FCC has set this up, and we've participated in almost every major auction in the last 20 years, and I'm sure we'll take a good hard look at this one.
Great. And it's another swath of mid-band, which you all discussed kind of having low, mid, and high band plans. Is there anything in particular of how you're planning to leverage mid-band? Are you looking at CBRS still potentially for PALs or GAA use?
We look at everything that we can possibly get our hands on and try to be the most creative that we can. I mean, we've looked at some, we have some CBRS, and as far as how we launch things, I mean, for fixed wireless access, we look at all of those opportunities, and this might be 2.5 might be another one for that as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and similar. I mean, we look at everything, and generally have some piece of all different bands. I mean, CBRS has been, it's much more like a Wi-Fi band where you're going to fill in and provide some capacity in it, so not quite as, not the same purpose as you would have for 2.5 gigahertz where it's full power band that really provides the balance of capacity and coverage that for very robust 5G services. The nice thing about this auction too is, a lot of the spectrum hasn't been auctioned. It's been, sitting fallow for over 20 years while the FCC has kind of played around with the band in different ways. So this auction really opens up the ability to fill in more urban areas where there are holes, and then into some of the more rural areas where it hasn't been licensed for a long time.
Yeah. And you touched on fixed wireless. I wanted to ask still about millimeter wave and how you're doing it. We've seen dense urban areas. I think US Cellular has done some interesting tests in rural for a fixed wireless solution. Is kind of what kind of use cases are you looking at millimeter wave for?
Yeah, we obviously have had a couple of really positive public test results that we've shared with the industry. We've taken a somewhat different approach from the traditional large carrier small cell deployment, and we've started testing and have put it up on a number of macro sites, broadcasting to a wider distance in order to maximize the coverage per household. We did a really innovative demo of it in West Virginia last fall with Senator's Manchin and Capito, and you can go out and see that on the web. Our intent is to continue to deploy it in that manner in the areas where it makes economic sense to do so as a fixed broadband to the home deployment. And we're excited about the opportunities. Obviously, T-Mobile's got a lot of stuff underway, and we think it's the future, and there's going to be a lot of, we'll probably get to this later, but there's infrastructure opportunities at the federal level, and we intend to pursue those vigorously.
Yeah, and we actually do a little bit differently than, our broadband to the home service is served by our mobile network. So there is no fixed wireless network that is different from what we do for the mobile service. So, we look at where our deployments have enough capacity to serve both our mobile customers and to provide services to the home. And then we've got a device that goes in the home to serve that, different than just a cell phone. But it really is, and again, that's as we get more and more mid-band spectrum, it opens up more opportunities to serve more customers with broadband to the home.
And that added capacity is kind of what helps prevent any issues for your mobile customers when you're also serving.
Yes, right, yeah. So they look at the spectrum assets and capacity in an area on a sector by sector basis, and how the mobile customers are being served, and then whether or not we've got enough capacity to also serve homes, and to make sure that the mobile customers are not negatively impacted.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I'd add to that is there's a whole lot of capacity coming online in the mid-band over the course of the next couple of years with C-band and the DoD spectrum at 3.45, that there's going to be plenty of capacity to manage both a mobile network and a fixed network, in our belief.
Okay, great. And Cellcom is also doing some fixed wireless. How are you thinking about deploying?
Yes, also with the fixed wireless, but just to go back to the millimeter wave, I mean, the way that we look at using using that. So where we live, it's cold most of the year. And then, so people come out in the summer and they all group together in one place called Lambeau Field, or, you know, and so we think that, you know, so we have all of the 28 gig millimeter wave in our home county. And so we can deploy it in those kind of situations where we have, you know, 100,000 people coming in one place. So I think the millimeter wave is going to be key for those kind of things, and for all the parties and the Hokadays and the, you know, all that stuff. So.
Okay, great.
But yeah, so we have kind of all the tools, the fixed wireless, we can even do the landline, whatever works for people, whatever works for that territory. And we have to serve islands too. I know mountains are difficult, but we have some islands where people live too.
And we actually, our millimeter wave, we look at similarly though too, to, you know, really serve a lot of capacity in those areas where people are gathering, where you've got denser deployments or denser concentrations of people in a mobile environment, not so much for a fixed to the broadband to the home service.
Right. Makes sense. And Alan, are you considering anything with fixed wireless or millimeter wave?
We are. We participated in the 39 gig, 40 gig, and we have a very significant amount of that millimeter wave spectrum available. We haven't fully developed a plan yet. One of the things that really affects ours is being owned by the 5 small rural telephone companies. We've actually got 9 of these 27 counties that already has fiber to the home 100% today, built out by those 3 co-ops.
That's awesome.
And then with plans that are in place, there'll be 3 more counties in about 3 years that will be built out fiber to the home. So out of those 27 counties, within about 3 more years, we're going to have 12 of those that's going to have fiber to the home fully. So that takes away a lot of your fixed wireless opportunities whenever you've already got them served by fiber. Yeah. But by the same token, it also makes fiber available to you to be able to put to your equipment where you want to put it anywhere in those areas as well. So there's some advantage to be had by that too. But fixed wireless, in about half our territory, there'll be significant opportunity to use it. In about half, it'll be minimal.
Okay, great. And that kind of is a good segue into fiber in general and how are fiber rollouts kind of impacting your network plans. And maybe we could get a little bit into that and how you're evaluating different options.
Well, and you know, in our state, the grants are going to fiber. Really, is what the government is looking at, and which works fine for us. We have that capability. We started as a small telephone company in 1910, and we already have everything new we build in fiber already. So that's actually allowed us to move into new markets. And you know, when you get into the rural areas, I mean, some of the large telecoms have really kind of left those networks to go because it's just too expensive to invest in that landline technology. And we look at it as, so we serve all of these people in a mobile capacity. We know these people, we have the capabilities, so we can go in there with fiber as well. And like Alan said, it gives us advantages on the mobile side as well. You know, I look at, you know, our customers now become communities, and what can we do together as a community? We'll have fiber to this entire area, we'll serve everyone. If there's hard people to get to, we can employ fixed wireless, and so we look at it more as serving communities and helping enable whatever they want to do. Oh, like that.
There is somebody out there.
Full house.
The day has begun.
There.
Oh, no, sorry, go back, go take a nap.
Yeah. So, I mean, fiber is obviously hugely important to the network, right, and getting out. And as we increase our capacity and extend further and further into more rural areas, particularly as we're deploying more mid-band out there, you know, there needs to be fiber and, you know, fiber to the towers to feed that. It is a little, you know, I do think it's a little short-sighted for all the government funding to just be focused on fiber, though. You know, the broadband to the home service can be deployed very quickly. It's a very competitive service and has you know, our speeds that, you know, we are advertising or kind of fall into the 35 to 115 megabit per second, which is, plenty for people working from home and, and doing most of the applications that you see. And, it can extend the reach into places where it's very difficult to deploy fiber much more quickly. And, we think it should be a viable alternative. It also does help provide competition. I mean, you see some pretty dramatic differences in both price and service in areas where there's competition versus areas where there's not. And so it does provide I think a good alternative that helps provide some of that the competition that's necessary.
And from your standpoint, the time for cost to deploy and time versus when you're generating revenue, is it pretty easy for you to stand up these fixed wireless sites and services?
Yeah, it is. And it's again, it's where we're deploying our mobile network, and then being able to take advantage of additional capacity, and particularly something with like the 2.5 gigahertz auction coming up, right? We'll hopefully be able to add a lot of additional capacity in more rural areas as we push out. But we are, as I said, we'll be 300 million pops by the end of next year, covering that, with that mid-band spectrum, and that will provide a lot of good opportunities for extending broadband to the home in areas that need it.
Steve and I don't always agree, but we seem to be agreeing a lot on this panel. I'll echo all that. The question of economics is a really interesting one, and it depends a lot on the geography and what you're talking about, where you're at. So there are areas today where we have towers deployed, but they don't have, for instance, fixed wireless deployed to them. The incremental cost of putting that fixed wireless up on an existing tower is really pretty minimal, and is a fraction of what it costs to go out and trench fiber to every house in an area. Now, if you get to the parts of America that lack towers, then you've got to layer the cost of tower construction on top of that. And we still think in many of those areas, fixed wireless is a much more economical option that governors are going to be presented with when they have limited funding in which to bring substantial broadband service to everybody in the state. And it's going to be some of it's going to be economics, some of it's going to be politics. Can a governor who's up for election in 2024 really say to his citizens or her citizens, oh, don't worry, it'll be here by 2020, fiber will get here by 2029. I don't think that's a viable option in the political sphere. So lots of things for people to think about.
Great.
Yep. And getting, for us, fixed wireless I think is a great option. Getting the high power for CBRS would be extremely helpful.
Yes, it would be.
One of the challenges is topography, frankly, and trees, which we love trees, but our fixed wireless doesn't, right? So that would, you look at our area, we don't have the issues of interfering with the military. That's more of a coastal thing. So, I know usually we have to do everything ubiquitously, but the higher power would be a game changer for us.
Yeah. Does anyone else have feelings on higher power?
Absolutely. The higher the better.
Certainly, yeah. Absolutely.
All for it. And I do want to get back to the funding aspect. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of support for fixed services, including fiber. How are you evaluating kind of the best opportunities for mobility? Does there need to be more government support focused specifically on mobile use cases?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. This is a multifaceted problem. We've talked a lot about the fixed wireless, fixed home broadband side of it, but kind of gotten lost in this whole pandemic debate about broadband is that people do like to get out and travel and come to shows and connect from their room upstairs and down by the harbor here. And when you get out into rural America, there's still a whole lot of the country that lacks ubiquitous 5G, 4G, and in some cases 3G service. And the government needs to focus on that. Certainly the 5G fund that the FCC will auction at some point will be an option for that. We don't think there's enough money in it. That pot needs to get bigger. But beyond that, one of the attractive things that we see about fixed wireless as we go around and talk to governors in advance of the distribution of the federal broadband dollars is you kind of get a 2-for-1 if you pick fixed wireless, because when we climb that tower to put fixed wireless up, or we construct a new tower, we're going to put up a 5G, state-of-the-art 5G mobile network underneath it, and that's going to bring better, stronger, faster mobile service to everybody. So it's a great 2-for-1 that fiber doesn't bring you.
Mm-hmm.
So the challenge is going to be making sure that the money goes to areas that aren't unserved, right? And the mapping problem at the FCC has been, going on for many years. New maps will be submitting that information in September. Mm-hmm. But it always takes the FCC a while to get those stood up, and then there's a challenge process that will accompany that, and that has proven to be. The challenge process has proven to be challenging in the past, right? I mean, they shut down the original MF2 funding program because of concerns about the accuracy of the maps. So that'll be, I think funding areas where it really needs to be funded makes sense, but it's we'll see how well it goes on, and how long it takes to really get that process right, because it's been a difficult one in the past.
Mm-hmm. So any idea when accurate data might be available?
September, so we're supposed to submit our information in September for, for the new maps. It'll probably take the FCC several months to work through that and to get it up on their site. And I don't, so my guess is probably the beginning of next year for that to become available. But then the other thing really is then the challenge process. So if, if other carriers or governments think the maps aren't accurate, they're going to come in and challenge it. And so that'll impact the timing of when you can really move forward with funding in areas if they're, whether or not, to accurately determine whether they're served or unserved areas.
Mm-hmm. So greater urgency in terms of getting that funding moving forward based on the maps.
I think you need accurate maps to get the funds moving forward, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, interesting. And Alan, you kind of talked about your roadmap earlier on 5G and serving your specific area. What do you hope to see kind of from government funding? Do you feel like anything's applicable right now? That you mentioned a lot of fiber to the sites already, so.
We do have fiber to most of the cell sites. We've got, I think it's 302 cell sites that are turned up, and over a 30-year period we have invested in construction of those. We own the tower sites themselves on most of them. We lease on a few. We've got fiber deployed today to about 80% of those. And so we're in pretty good shape for that. We do need some more fiber built. But the concept that I see everything is in order for us to bring to life our vision of 5G, we're going to be bringing essentially all the resources available that we've got in our financial aspect of things. And it concerns me that 5, 6, 7 years in the future, at some point in time, whenever the next realm comes, are we going to be able to recover financially and really be able to look further in the future? Or are we going to find ourselves challenged? To be financially whole and sound 5 to 6, 7, 8 years in the future, we really need to have access to a significant share of government assistance on this round. We potentially can do this round, but if we have to fund it all, the debt, and look ahead at what you're going to have 5, 6, 7 years from now, it starts to look scary there. And so I'm very hopeful that as we start this process that we will be able to access some government funding to help us with part of it.
Okay, great.
And I think the goal of the government is obviously, a noble goal. I mean, we're trying to get broadband to everyone, but I think it's kind of agonizing to go through, the challenging process and all this kind of stuff too. We're all on the same page, but then when the government is prescribing what kind of technology, I mean, I agree that gets to be a little strange. The goal should be to not have to overbuild. I mean, we even look at in Wisconsin now, there's a lot of middle mile being funded or requests for middle mile. And sometimes we'll see that middle mile is just going right over our backbone. And it's like, it's just, we want the funds to go to the right places and the right people. And I hope that's the goal. And allow the experts to choose the technology, right? I think that's the bottom line.
So more of a technology agnostic approach to funding?
I think that would be a good way to go, yeah.
Similar feelings?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. And
Well, right, and that goes back to the discussion too of, fixed versus, or, just funding fiber versus allowing, wireless to the home, and fixed wireless services for funding, right?
And there is a competition issue. In my apartment in Washington, D.C., I have two choices for my broadband. Comcast will charge me $160 a month, and T-Mobile's just stood up, not to do a commercial for T-Mobile, but they've just stood up their at-home product at $50 a month. And those are the two choices, and in the long run, that's going to bring some interesting results to consumers.
interesting, great. And kind of tied back to that broadband mapping and funding, are minimum speed thresholds and what the FCC is looking at. Do you think, as they're considering that, what are you hopeful? Are there different kind of benchmarks are they choosing the right benchmarks for wireless versus fixed?
Yeah, I mean, I think so that's 35.3 is the benchmark there, and I think that's a reasonable benchmark to select, and to, provides a good level of service for people and a good minimum, level of service. And
Depends a little bit on who you listen to. I mean, I think 35.3 was reasonable when it was adopted by the FCC in 2020 for a 5G baseline service. I think as you watch this broadband money roll out over the next 24 months, you're going to see those speeds significantly above that. And the FCC is going to potentially have to take a look at that. I think more fundamentally, they need to take a look at what the benchmarks are for served versus unserved. Their current definition says anything that's got 4G LTE at 5.1 is served and will never need government support. And I don't think that's true for a robust 5G network. And I think the FCC needs to revisit that. And certainly we can't predict how fast every area that's got 4G today is going to come up, absent competitive forces or government support.
Well, and that goes to the issue of just the challenge of targeting the funds appropriately, right? So whether or not there was enough competition and interest to deploy 4G LTE at those speeds, there's an assumption that there should be a driver to continue to do that with 5G and to increase those speeds. And it's a little bit of a balancing game for the FCC to try and predict the future versus what's currently deployed as they look at maps.
Makes sense.
And I think we just look at hopefully that the government doesn't get too onerous in the testing and allow, especially for a small carrier like us, it's we need to put our efforts into building an excellent network and not testing. Some is fine, but hopefully they won't have too many handcuffs on red tape. So can we say red tape?
You're an optimist.
Don't hold your breath.
I know I am an optimist. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, great. And I know this topic is 5G deployments, but I just want to ask a quick question on 3D shutdowns, because we're seeing those happen across carriers. And I mean, is that a good opportunity to repurpose spectrum? And maybe Alan, have you been preparing for 3G shutdowns? How are you thinking about that?
We are, as we looked at the national carriers and the dates that they have set to turn theirs down, we have in fact selected a date that we intend to turn our 3G down, and as such to repurpose it back into 5G. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, same answer for us. Some people have got public dates, some people have got private dates. It's obviously coming. We operate in 21 states, and we're already starting to see shutdowns, plan for shutdowns. It's impacting roaming options right now,
big time.
And that will continue to be an issue until all of the major networks are shut down.
Yeah, we have we shut down the Sprint CDMA network on March 31st. So that's winding down now, and we've announced a shutdown of our UMTS network in July 1st. We'll shut down. So, but it does free up capacity. So spectrum that can be repurposed for 5G services, and tower space to provide the equipment and to assist that rollout. And at the end of the day, it's a much better service that customers get when they're getting 5G, and there's a huge benefit for those customers.
Agree, and I think as a rural carrier, shutting down 3G is at first scary, because that's really how we can cover wide areas. But refarming is important to us, and I think there's new opportunities for 5G roaming that I don't know that we really anticipated, but I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities to work together in that arena. So.
And we've really tried to work to make sure that customers, it's a positive experience for customers, that they're not negatively impacted, right? We have a lot of device offers and notifications to customers that lead up to this shutdown. So it's not, there is a lot of engagement with them to make sure that they've got devices that can support moving to 5G in the future.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, great. I think we only have about 1 minute left, so maybe just to wrap it up, can everyone go very quickly your top incentive and top challenge for deploying 5G right now?
Customer density.
Customer density.
That's both of them?
That's both of them.
Yeah. I think, service to the customer, extending our footprint are really the big thing, and both on challenges too, because, getting to infrastructure in those really rural areas to provide that coverage is a challenge.
I mean, all of the above. And on top of that, competition. We have a lot of competition. We're all fighting for the same areas. So.
Certainly. The incentive is the desire that the folks in the mountains of East Kentucky will have wireless coverage that's equal to what we've got in metropolitan America. And the biggest challenge has got to be paying for it and operating it in an area that's difficult to cover with a very sparse population.
All right, great. Well, this was a fantastic session. Thank you guys so much for sharing all of your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you.